I'm going to call the meeting to order. Oh. Call the meeting to order and do roll call. And Ian? Sinya?
Present.
And Nia?
Present.
And do we have any agenda changes, requests, or deletions?
I hope not. We only have one item.
No deletions, please. All right, any oral communications? All right. Well, I just want to say a quick word here. Next week is Thanksgiving already, which is it's upon us already, so happy Thanksgiving, everyone. And the holidays are coming up, so happy holidays and happy New Year. And some news, and I think all of you got the invitation for Rise Retirement Lunch at the end of the month. And she's been a real champion of the arts and a real friend of this commission, and we're going to sorry to see her go. She's given us great guidance and advice over the years, and I just wish her all the best in retirement. And instead of a card,
Oh,
I got her a book that we can all sign. So we can hand, and at least I'll give that to you and let you steward that, and we can give that her to
For
retirement.
signing,
And
okay.
please sign in the book, and any place you want in the book. Just sign, and we'll present it to her at her retirement lunch.
Thank you very much.
that's lovely.
Hey, approval of the minutes for the last meeting, October 18th. We'd have a motion to do that.
I approve the minutes for October 18th.
I second.
Any changes or corrections to the deletions to the minutes? Hey, all those in favor?
Aye.
Hey, okay, and that passes, and now we'll get to staff comments.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So let's start with the California Avenue murals. As you may recall, the last time we met, we requested funding for the repair of some of the Cal Ave murals, and it seems as though hopefully there will actually be rain next week. It is just in a nick of time, so here you can see them on site working. And Nadia has several images she can take us through. Here you can see some old graffiti that was removed. They were able to even out a couple of other gouges where they did the fill of the wall and matched the texture and the color. And there were even some cracks that were not part of their scope where water was seeping in that they were able to seal. So we're very pleased with the work they did. We have the final report, is that right? Yeah, so we do have a final report in hand.
That was fast.
It was a quick turnaround. That was Nadia, quick on the draw, taking care of the collection. The next item is Cubberley. We had the CASP Open Studios, and it kicked off from 1 to 2 o'clock with a Meet the Artist event. So there are all of our Cubberley artists. And the Meet the Artist event was really fun. So they all had 2 minutes to give a quick overview of their artwork, and it was great because all the new artists also participated. So one of the fun things about Open Studios and about this event is it helps the Cubberley artists get to know about each other, because a lot of the time they keep very different studio hours. And so even though it was smoky and we didn't quite get the attendance we have in years past, there was a steady stream of people who came through. Let's see, we've also opened, so the Porch Light event that we had attracted about 60 people. It was a really lively event. Some of the speakers, it was more humorous, one was more musical. We laughed, we cried. There's Moon Zappa, who just delivered all these amazing little vignettes about what it was like to grow up in her household and coming of age and struggling to be an actress. Again, we laughed, we cried. It was fun. It was a great event. So good turnout. And Porch Light had some really dedicated folks who come to all of their events in San Francisco who actually live in Palo Alto. So they were thrilled to actually have Porch Light doing an event in Palo Alto that they didn't have to travel as far for. And then we have also launched Story in 2 locations, so at the Art Center Rinconada Library and at the Mitchell Park Library. And Nadia, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about, so we're only a few days in, but.
Right, really. So we're just 10 days in the experiment, and we started a little later in Mitchell Park. And what we've observed so far is just a steady interest. We have, clicks through the app and scans. So we're going to continue to monitor. We have 60 days in this free trial, and we'll continue collect data, and that will inform our decision should we extend it to the rest of the collection or not. But I'm very hopeful.
And that is, that's it for staff comments.
Hi, thank you, Elise. And we'll get to non-action items, 4256 El Camino Real.
Great. So we have Randy Pop here to speak to the project, along with Danielle Wall, who is the art consultant who has been hired on for the project. Hopefully you had a chance to look at the staff report and their submission. And so I'd like to invite Randy, if you and Danielle want to come here. Are you acquainted with these mics? Yeah, so.
Make sure it's on.
Yeah, make sure it's on so it's recording. But the applicant team has met with public art staff several times regarding the options for integrating art at this site. As a hotel, of course, you know, the regulation is that the artwork is accessible to the public 40 hours per week. So it is really exciting to have a hotel where the lobby will be accessible to the public for that amount of time. So we do have the option to really consider having more indoor work. The other thing to keep in mind is that this is along El Camino Real, which is an extremely visually busy corridor. And so we have talked about that a lot as far as having, artwork out front, present, meant to be seen from El Camino versus something that would be more intimate and approachable. And I guess that is about it for setting it up. And I will turn it over to you, Randy.
Great, thank you. All right, well, thank you all for taking time to come do this with us tonight. I'll just very quickly tell you, we had an architectural review board hearing for this project this morning. It was the second formal hearing for the project. And although the board was not able to take action on the project because it's in the middle of getting some reports done and all of the public process and the timing of that didn't allow them to approve the project today, they were very positive about it overall, and I think excited about both the interior and the exterior concepts of it. And so coming off the excitement of that, it's fun to be talking to you a little bit about what we're hoping to do with this project in terms of artwork. So go ahead to the next slide, please. So, we just put together a quick agenda for you tonight, and we can do more than this or really whatever you want in terms of question and answer, but I wanted you to meet our team, and I'll introduce us a little bit. I think the goal here was to review the project with you a little bit, and then to discuss some of our current thinking. So I'm Randy Pop. I'm an architect. I've been working here in town for, 30 years or something, and a lot of people know me as the director, the architectural project director from the Toby Craig Campus for Jewish Life Project. But I've done lots of work in town, and I've been recently hired on a number of projects as an entitlement consultant, sort of a specialist in getting projects through the Palo Alto process, and not necessarily being the architect on the job, but really just helping the project get through, and that's what I'm doing here. So sort of giving advice. And as part of that role, the owners look to me to make recommendations for people to bring in, talented people who I think can help the project. And so when we started talking about art on this project, Danielle and I have known each other a long time, and so I introduced Danielle to the ownership group and the project manager, Catherine Wong and Mircea Vaskarian, and we I think decided very quickly that she would be the right person to do this. So I actually want Danielle to maybe tell you a little bit about her background, and I've asked her to be honest and sort of tell you,
Ordinarily, I'm not honest.
well,
As opposed to.
as opposed to holding back, be really clear about what your qualifications are so that we establish what you're capable of. Because I am not going to be as good at that as you will.
I think what Randy is saying is that he wants me to be, perhaps I'm wrong, but comprehensive about some of the work that I've done and not just skim over it, which is my tendency. Excuse me for coughing, but we all know why. I've been an art consultant for over 20 years. I started off, my background is in art. I studied art, studio art, and art history. And I worked primarily with the legal industry, with financial institutions, medical institutions. And then in 2011, I was invited into Facebook to work with them and develop their artist in residency program, which I did. And from that, the focus primarily of my practice has been, I'd say about 85, 90% on the technology sector based here in Silicon Valley. So I've worked with Facebook in numerous locations around the country, that many times in headquarters and in Seattle, in Washington, D.C., where else? Miami, Buenos Aires, London, Mumbai, Singapore, Mexico City, and other locations. And then from that, I also started working with PayPal, and PayPal also has locations in some of those same places. I've worked with them in their headquarters. I've worked with their CEO in his office, and I will be working with him starting in January on his house in Palo Alto for his private collection. But also with PayPal, I've worked in their Scottsdale offices, Singapore, Manila, Tel Aviv, Mexico City, Toronto, Berlin, and numbers of other places. But other clients include Braintree, GoDaddy. I just finished my 4th building at Google, which was really exciting. eBay headquarters, Zuckerberg, San Francisco General, and Laguna Honda Hospital, and the San Francisco PUC, and the Hayes Mansion in San Jose. Those 4 projects were all related to art commissions in San Jose, which they call the Office of Cultural Affairs, but it's the Art Commission and San Francisco Art Commission. I've also, see, now is when I would stop, and Randy would say, no, just keep
going.
telling
Just
them.
keep going.
Okay, now it's just, okay. Union Bank of Switzerland, Criterion Capital Management, Environ Global. Now can I stop? I
you
think
can
they have an
stop.
idea.
It's
Okay.
All right,
So,
yeah, and
oh, okay.
you know,
And even that's just
what I
a
wanted to
partial
really
list.
establish is that we have someone on the team here who has lots of skill, lots of knowledge, and a very broad reach. And so, on a project like this where we don't really know where we're gonna go yet, right? We don't know what the artwork should be or even where exactly in the building it's going to be. What I'm looking for is someone who has a lot of experience in understanding this and can help guide us through that process. And in fact, even more than that, I'm very hopeful that we can work collaboratively here as sort of a group and help figure out something really fun. Because as you said, I think, you know, the goal is to create something here in this hotel that is different than we've seen in other places in Palo Alto. And to do something really exciting in that way takes lots of people involved in it and lots of collaboration. And then the last people that I would introduce who are not here tonight are Chuck and Chris, who are architects. And they work for Studio T Squared, and they're doing a beautiful job with the project.
One thing I would like to add is that I think both Randy and I understand and have a tremendous appreciation for what public art is and what it does. And one of the most important things it does is it democratizes the experience of looking at art. It involves people of all ages. It helps people feel a sense of community and relate to the community. Also, if it's happening in your own town, you feel a tremendous amount of civic pride because this completely cool factor is coming into your town. It's into, maybe we don't own the hotel, but we have access to it. It's a place that we can go for a drink or we can take our kids to sit and have a snack in this beautiful environment that ultimately becomes very meaningful to people in the community. So public art is something that we both really appreciate and support. And it's particularly interesting to work on a project like this that does have this important public art component for just those reasons.
So in terms of timeline, as I mentioned, we're working our way through the architecture review process. We anticipate in January we'll be done with that. We'll submit for building plan check right away and hopefully get initial approvals for starting construction in April, and we'll begin, we'll do our submission in April, and we'll gain project approvals from them and start construction in probably October and kick off about a 20-month process. So that's kind of what, in back of napkin, we think the timeline is here on the project. In regard to the site plan, and maybe, there's not really a way, I'm gonna just stand up and point, if that's okay. Can I do that?
Mm-hmm. Okay, I have a laser pointer.
Will it work on the screen?
Yeah.
And I can stand at the mic for you.
It's really at the chambers where the pointers don't work for some
Right.
reason, but these are just regular
great.
screens.
While you're digging that out, thank you so much for making that available. I'll just tell you, what we've got is sort of a C-shaped building. And the idea of the C-shaped building is that we've developed a nice interior courtyard that is a mirror of the courtyard for the residential project that's next door. And so the active open space for them is also our active open space, and the two share solar access in that way. The left side of the drawing, you see where it says King King, is a two-story portion of the building in the back, because we're close to some neighbors back there, and we wanted to have the building be less impactful to them along this really beautiful grove of redwood trees. Thank you so much. And so, yeah, that works great. So this, this row of redwoods back here is a really big deal in terms of how the site feels. And so this, is that working? Yeah. It's a little hard to see. Can you guys see the red? It's not showing up for me.
Oh, yeah.
Right on, okay. So, as we get closer to El Camino, the building goes up to 5 stories. And that was a rendering I showed you in the beginning, and I'll come back to that in a moment. But the idea is that as you come down El Camino, you get your first experience of the building right in, I'm just gonna go point. Thank you. You get your first experience of the building because you're coming from this direction, and you see this corner of the building where we've got seating in a space that has a very pedestrian level experience. And that gives you that cue that there's something here, and then all of a sudden you get to the driveway, the porte cochere that you drive through, and this is where Uber and Lyft drop-offs happen. It's where shuttles come and go from, UPS drop-off, and guests come and leave from that area. If you knew your way, you'd just come straight in here, go down, and there's a 2-level garage below this with parking that meets all the rules. This is a totally conforming project, by the way. And so the idea here is that this entry sequence and this space that's here is all bracketed by this wall that is entirely glass. And our goal with that is to really create a space that is very active in terms of its indoor-outdoor connection, and draws you into the building, and then draws you through the building and out to the courtyard beyond. And if you don't mind going on to the next slide, you can see that, in terms of the architecture, we've got some double height space out at the street. The seating area on one side where you can start to see some of the colored glass and things that we're thinking would be, this sort of special material to help buffer for the pedestrians in that area, and then the double height porte cochere that you drive through. There's an awful lot of pedestrians standing in it in this rendering, but that's the driving area over there on the left. Go ahead to the next slide. So zooming in on this space a little bit, again, I think what I'll point out is that this glass wall is very perforated. We've got a section of collapsible doors that are here, doors here, doors here. So areas that are glass are kind of broken up a little bit, but the idea is that it is really transparent, and you really see the interior. So what I'm suggesting with these red lines that I've got on here is these are opportunities for us, right? These are large expanses of wall inside the building that we can start to evaluate for placement of art or using in some way. And what I'm excited about is that it will be very visible from the street, because we've got this double height volume and we've got all of this glass. You're obviously moving by on El Camino pretty quickly, but if you were to slow down or if you were walking in this area, you would see into the building and be able to see all of this. And it's something that I think will draw you in. And we're hoping that the neighborhood, particularly the residents who live in the buildings behind this, there are 265 people that live behind this building, and lots of people that are nearby will come over here for a glass of wine. They'll be out for their evening walk, and this will be a nice place to stop. And as Danielle said, come in, experience the artwork, have fun being in the space as part of that. And so, you know, I just think it's full of opportunity. So go ahead to the next. So this is, again, just a quick view of what I think that'll look like. You know, in the renderings like this, glass is always shown super reflective, but we'll work hard to find glass that does not have that level of reflection, but will be much more transparent looking. And this is that sort of pedestrian seating area that's right near the front. Of course, nobody wants to sit right on El Camino. That would be a little unpleasant, but we're buffering the space a little bit with this glass wall, but it's only where the people are sitting. As you move by, you see around this pretty easily. And again, that glass wall on the opening, you know, you can start to see into the lobby there through those folding glass doors, and how large and interesting those walls will be, these double height volumes. And in terms of the material palette on the outside of the building, pretty restrained in terms of the number of materials that we're using, but very high quality. We're looking to have a language for this building that is very consistent with kind of earthy tones. The Palo Alto redwoods buildings that this is surrounded by are shingle and wood-clad buildings. You know, from I think it's about the early 80s is when that was built. And so we want to respond to that context a little bit. And I think that, you know, all of this is drawing us into some thoughts about the kind of quality level and maybe the character of what we might put inside the building. The landscape design also has been very carefully considered for this building. We're using what people are calling kind of an Asian-inspired palette of materials. The idea is that we'll have a bit of a river that will draw you through the building. You might have seen that on the floor plan a moment ago. And the idea is that the wood siding sort of is foresty, and the river that goes through it will pull you in and draw you through the building and into this courtyard that we have in the back. We have this really nice palette of materials that are, you know, at the same time very consistent, but in some ways contrasting in terms of reflectivity, texture, wood, stone, glass, etc. Maybe a little bit of water dotted in there. And then same thing with the planting palette, right? A lot of textural differences, a lot of contrast in terms of color and material and height and character, you know, round and columnar and bushy and spiky, all of those kinds of things. And so at the end of the day, you know, I think the reason that we're here tonight is to introduce the project to you, to show you that we're starting to think about what we might do with this project. But we would really love to hear from you a little bit about what kind of guidance you might give us as we go through this process, and any thoughts that you have about what might be appropriate. You know, I've not participated in this board before. I was chair of the ARB for a few years, and so I know how that board works well, but I've not participated in this this setting before. And so, you know, whatever we can garner from you is going to be really valuable to us as we start this process, and it really is intended to be a very collaborative effort on our part. So, please.
Great. Thank you, Randy and Danielle. Thank you for attending the meeting tonight. Very nice presentation.
Thanks.
And I see that you've really put a lot of thought into, especially for the public art and the areas that it can go into. And I think that courtyard in itself could be public art with the,
Do you mind going back to the slide, the sort of enlarged plan?
with that can also be, there is environmental public art, so that can be part of public art as well. I mean, this is exciting, and I think you've really pointed out some areas that would be well suited for public art, and I'm sure Danielle will be able to steer the project in the right direction for the public art. This is an exciting project. Thank you for sharing with us.
May I just
Anybody else
ask?
have comments?
May I just ask for clarification based on that? Is the courtyard actually open to the public? It looks like there's another set of doors
It is.
leading back
Yeah,
there.
it is. Our
It is.
intent is that people will come and have a glass of wine in the bar. You know, it's not meant to be a restaurant in any way. That's not what we're serving. the goal here is a 4+ level hotel, and targeted much more toward the business traveler. There really aren't family rooms in this hotel. They're king bed rooms and pretty efficient size rooms for a single traveler. I think the goal that everyone that's on the team has really established is that we will draw in the community, and that they'll come and experience the courtyard, they'll come and experience the bar, and they'll come and experience the art. And the benefit that we would reap from that is that they would recommend the hotel to friends or book there for their guests because it's a nice place. But also, it just helps to create interest and excitement for people who are using the hotel. So it's good for everybody.
Any other comments or questions?
I thought that was a really good idea to both look at the interior space that you had suggested, as well as looking at the outside space, because you're dedicating so much of the outside space, and it's so integral to the project that it may also be an opportunity, because we're looking at a lot of outside opportunities that for different projects. So, and because Palo Alto and the climates that we have, 90% of the time you get to really spend outside, even in the evenings. So that may be, an area of focus. But, it's however you guys plan it.
Anything else?
This is probably too early of a question, and it's actually not a design question, but I spend a lot of time in hotels like this, and they seem to excel at developing some sort of paradoxical situation where you're invited in, but simultaneously can be made to feel uncomfortable intentionally. So, a 4+ star hotel or a 5-star hotel simultaneously has an elitism to it that is in part about the service and the way people look at you, and it says hi, welcome, or please go away, depending on what side of the bed I've been sleeping on or my shape.
Opinion.
Yeah, I mean, listen. So I'm curious, and also you referenced the difficulty of walking sometimes on El Camino, and the fact that, of course, from a design perspective, you can invite people in by being open, but there might be a lot more people in cars than there are on foot. And so because I love the idea when you referred to, especially to the neighbors, and it being a place that the neighbors are aware of the art that's in there, and the neighbors make a habit of coming over to the hotel and enriches a community in a lot of ways and becomes a place that's shared. How also do you let people know this is probably a question for you, Danielle, how do people know that they should be going to see what's on in there and that they're allowed to and should feel comfortable doing so?
Well, I love your observations because I think they're all very apt. One of the things you do in creating an environment is you make sure people feel comfortable there. So it would be up to the owners to make sure that the management understood that people are welcome. And if we are to judge people, especially in this town, but really any place, if you have the perspective that you judge people by how they look, well, you're going to be wrong in this town but really in all of America, but certainly in this town. So I think that has to come from the top, that people have to understand, the people who work there have to understand that it's a welcome place. One of the things that hotels with really outstanding art collections have done, and it's been very effective, is they have like a podcast. I developed the podcast for the Four Seasons Hotel in East Palo Alto, and they ran it on their TV station with a visual and then a podcast that people could listen to. I also conducted numerous tours of the art collection because it was a really interesting collection. So they do have a very open feeling, and they do welcome people there, but it's like as you've said, it has to be established that that's what that hotel represents, and that comes from the top, and people probably have to be reminded of that. And then places develop reputations. They can develop a reputation for being not a comfortable place to go for the reasons you've mentioned, or a place like on Sand Hill Road, there's the Rosewood Hotel. I don't know if you've been to it, but they have a very nice collection. And it is a very fun place to go on, for some reason, a Thursday night is just known as being like, not a Friday night or a Saturday night, but Thursday night. And it just has this reputation in the community, and it's extremely welcoming. So it really starts with the people who work there, but starts with the people who own it. So yeah, that would be something to earmark to the owners. If we want this place to feel like it belongs to the community, then let the community belong to it.
I'd also suggest that there's a subconscious element to architecture, right? There's this theory about a transparent wall that might occur if you design a building a certain way, and the idea of putting seating out on El Camino that's visible. You know, the idea that years ago, I was part of the team that designed Baroni's Cafe in Menlo Park, right? It's one of the most successful outdoor cafe spaces in the area. Right on El Camino, right? And I think that one of the reasons that really works is that it's visible, but it's kind of behind the fountain. It's out there, but it's a little bit behind the planter, right? And so there's enough protection for the people to feel comfortable sitting outside, and there's enough visibility for the people who are moving by quickly to see that there's something going on there. And so that nice balance that occurred there is something that, you know, I've sort of strived for that in a lot of other projects since, and I worked for this guy, Bob Peterson, who was a really great architect. And I learned a lot from him. And it was really, he was clever about this kind of stuff. And I think that the idea of what we're doing with this outdoor seating is similar to that. It's visible but protected, it's available and inviting, and I do think that this big, tall, double height glass wall will allow you to see into the building and understand that it's open. And then,
Interesting.
you're absolutely right. It comes from the management, it comes from the ownership, and this direction to say, we want people to come in. But I've already heard from them that that's what they want. They're looking to invite the neighbors in. They want to become that other place, that when they are, you know, in their units at night and they're thinking about what to do, maybe we'll go down and have a glass of wine over at the Catarina. And it becomes this nice thing to do. And so we're really hopeful for that. I live about 2 blocks away from this. And my wife and I were both talking about the fact that this would be a really lovely thing to be able to go for a walk in the evening, go over here, have a glass of wine, and walk back home. And so I think that this could create catalyst, right? This could cause that kind of movement in the neighborhood in a way that there isn't an opportunity for right now. And I do think that in architecture and design, we have the ability to sort of subconsciously control how people move and interact. You know, I think about that when I design homes for people. I think about that when I design office space. And I think it's a responsibility. And so doing things like this and that, you know, that intentional river that's going through the building, and you see how it quickly draws you in, and then it meanders around, right? That kind of element is so intentional, because as you're walking, you wouldn't see the whole thing, right? It becomes this experience that unfolds for you, right? You don't know where you're going as you're going along the path, but eventually it takes you someplace and it becomes interesting. And I really love the idea of that kind of experience. So that's how I think we're going to draw people in, and that's how I think we're going to keep people coming back.
If I could just jump in for a second, I think Commissioner Klaus has an excellent point, and that's a lot of what we've discussed with the team is whenever we're working with the team on where artwork should be placed, the definition of public is, the way I like to explain it is just because it's visible behind glass doesn't necessarily make it public. If your impulse is to approach the piece and you are prohibited from doing so, that's a real challenge. We do also list the public art and private development artworks that are installed on our city site, so anyone could come check. They do have to be available. There is standard signage that has this small line about it being commissioned through this requirement. So there are ways that we can help reinforce that, but from what we've gotten from the team, it is something that they're very much interested in. So
I think that the artwork will be one of
It's a
those
good point.
defining elements for this hotel. And as they're doing their marketing materials, as they're advertising, as they're, encouraging people to use this space. I think that as such a unique aspect of the hotel, they will almost without doubt really put this at the forefront. And I think that will help to cause people to go, hey, I want to go see that.
And not get thrown out.
And then,
So one of the things I was thinking about when I'm looking at this rendering is, I definitely feel like there should be some whimsy. And one of the things when you were talking about I keep thinking about hearing you say wine. We're gonna go and have wine, and sitting in the patio, but like even some whimsical chairs or benches or things like that, and that could be outside or that are colorful. But I guess my question too is, I mean, on the inside, do they have I mean, you were talking about Japanese kind of garden, is that kind of the theme? Or is it, have they thought about that, or?
theme for the garden. So right now, and again, I'll be just completely transparent about this. They're trying to make a decision about whether they're going to be a private hotel or whether they're going to attach themselves to a brand. And they haven't made a decision about that yet. If they attach themselves to a brand, there's a certain aesthetic that comes with that. I've been successful in the few hotels that I've done here in Palo Alto already, in encouraging the brands to understand that Palo Alto's different. We're a little unique, and we're not going to build the same hotel that you'd build next to the freeway in Idaho that you'd build in Palo Alto, and that we're gonna require a level of quality that's a little higher in terms of what the Architectural Review Board here wants. The people coming to this town are gonna, they have a certain expectation of a little bit of quality because they're paying $800 a night for a room here, right? And so I think that we're not necessarily targeting that, but because of the occupancy rates, that's what's going on around here.
Wow.
And so I do think that the idea of having a little whimsy and having a little fun is something that I thoroughly enjoy. And again, it's like the discussion about the path. You want to surprise people. You want, and I don't mind shocking them a little bit sometimes, right? It's okay to create a little bit of tension or a little bit of surprise because it evokes emotion, right? It causes you to sort of pause. You're not just passing through something, but it causes you to go, hey, what is that? And I love that. Yeah, that's a great suggestion. The idea of whimsy is something we should include in sort of our guiding principles for our design here.
Well, I think one of the ideal things is to have a picture. You look at the picture, you know what it is, without having to put the name or anything on it. And so that really is kind of a goal of a lot of places. You just look at a picture, you know what it is. The other thing I like is the materials and the colors that you're using really blend in with the neighborhood. And so it'll become more acceptable, and it looks like it's part of the neighborhood, and it's not just this thing that's just dropped in the corner there, and it's a hotel.
We've tried to be very contextual.
Yeah, so I think that will also be more welcoming, especially to the neighborhood, for the
Right.
people coming in to that. So
I'm
then
glad-
it'll
I'm
blend
glad
in.
to see that.
Yeah. Yes. Hey, any other comments or questions?
So just to clarify, the location is the former Su Hong restaurant.
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, I was gonna try to look it up, okay.
It's the current Su Hong, it's the former Denny's.
Oh, no.
I stand corrected.
Right, so, and it's interesting,
That's a very big space.
this is not one of those places where like all of a sudden the rent got raised and David has decided he's done running a restaurant. He's tired of this, he's decided he's gonna go retire. And so he was looking for an out, and he and Catherine got together one evening and there was an opportunity for her to acquire the property, and she's decided to do that. And it's I think it's great. I think it's certainly a underutilized site in terms of what it is now. My kids are really sad Su Hong is going, but I think that the opportunity to put a hotel in this location is important for Palo Alto.
Well, there are a lot of hotels in that neighborhood.
It's kind of, it's described in terms of the zoning as a hotel zone. But I'll share with you, I'm also entitlement consultant for the Marriott hotels that are being built on San Antonio. And those are just a little bit ahead of this. once those Marriotts get finished, and there are 300 rooms coming as part of that development, we will be just about 100 rooms more than we were when the Hyatt Ricky's project closed. We haven't gotten back to the same number of rooms that Palo Alto had since Ricky's closed yet. We're still at a deficit. So once that Marriott opens, we'll be back where we were. And clearly, there's so much demand that we just need a few more. And so, and these are, the transit occupancy tax that comes from these is enormous. This hotel will generate somewhere in the neighborhood of about $2 million tax revenue annually. So that's good for everybody.
Yeah.
I have another question to ask. That was good to have the visual, Suhong. Is that, Danielle, will you be responsible for guiding them with other aspects of art if they decide to do? Because when I think of hotels, I think of very kind of just like, simple paintings or something on the wall, in people's rooms. But that's the one thing I think would be really nice if there is more of not necessarily a theme, but just a nice vision, and not just all of a sudden these kind of stoic, typical kind of works of art, and then all of a sudden this kind of unique.
I know.
Does that make sense?
It does. I guess I would simplify it by saying you don't want it to go from fantastic art to ugly art in the rooms.
Yes,
Yeah. To cookie cutter art in the rooms, and really unique and meaningful art elsewhere. No, the entire hotel will reflect that level of design and interest and integrity and commitment to art. So there won't be cheap posters that are framed with throwaway frames in the guest rooms, and then beautiful artwork elsewhere. And that won't happen for a couple of reasons. One is that it'll degrade the whole hotel if it does. And the other is the owner has no interest in doing that. And the third is that it kind of, when you look at current trends in hotels, one of the most important amenities right now is art. And this kind of hotel will, other than those of us that have a glass of wine in the lobby, really speaks to the people that can pay $800 a night or whatever that outrageous amount is. That's a wealthy clientele, and wealthy people are used to being around artwork. So they're not going to feel comfortable walking through a lobby that has meaningful, substantial artwork and then going to a room that feels like it's a behind-the-scenes type room and has nothing to do with the rest of the hotel. And the whole hotel will reflect that same level of integrity.
And then the other thing too, I was gonna mention, thank you, is that one of the, I really admire, I don't know if this was your doing with Facebook, but one of the things I've been really fascinated by with Facebook is that they really try to, in each of their headquarters or buildings, they try to find local artists. And I think that's one thing I would love to be able to see here, that we've been, I think, kind of trying to do as the Art Commission to source local artists. But I think could be a lot of great local
Yes, and
artists, and so I think that would be something to look
I'm
into.
really glad you brought
as
that
well.
up, because the idea of local art versus national art, and one of the things that's happened at Facebook is there has been an emphasis on local art, but then there are 1,000 variations to that. When I worked in their London office, we brought an artist in from California. When I worked in the Mumbai office, we brought artists in from Singapore. So we had local artists, but we also had artists in different places. And in Buenos Aires, it was all Buenos Aires artists. But there are just so many contradictions to that. And I think it's good to keep open the possibility of those contradictions, because to have a focus on local art is a really good beginning, but I at least wouldn't want to end it with that. So when I work with teams around the world, I always start with local art. But then there are contradictions, like when I worked with PayPal in Berlin, we brought in artists from Berlin, an artist from Berlin who is originally from England, artists from Singapore, artists from Italy. It's a lot of these artists, especially if they're mural artists, they're very itinerant, and then they get to know each other. So a lot of the artists I'm working with in one part of the world will know other artists that I've worked with literally in a different hemisphere. So, but that's mural art and street art. With more conventional art, framed art on the wall, it doesn't travel to that same degree, but it sort of does, because you have artists that are from San Francisco that then have gone on to New York. So I think starting local is a really good way to go, and then just seeing where that goes. And then we'd also have to define what local is. Is it Peninsula? Is it Bay Area? Hopefully it would be Bay Area.
And then one more quick addition I wanted to add is one thing that I think is kind of fun is if there's art that like people would actually take pictures with and can Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, which I don't do, but like, you know, I could see kind of something like, oh, that's a really cool whimsical sculpture. Let me take a picture of me next to it. And maybe that could generate. So that's another thing, like a talking
Right.
piece. Like
A
we have
light
these
sculpture.
owls at the Mitchell Park Library that a lot of kids like to sit on, and I mean, I don't think there's been a ton of momentum with kids Instagramming their photos, but like I think people like it and people love sitting on them and people love interacting. So it's that interaction kind of, which I love personally, and so if I would love to
People
see
take
more of that.
pictures at the Apple headquarters sign and all that.
Yeah.
You know, same type of thing.
Oh yeah, they have those, what is it, their little character that, what it is. They're Android.
The Android characters
Yeah,
at the
Android.
Go campus, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody goes to the Facebook sign.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I think that the idea of creating something that's interesting enough that people want to be seen on social media with it is definitely, you know, I don't necessarily want to say that's a goal for us.
Right.
But it would definitely be great if we achieve that, right? I think that something that's interesting enough that people seek it out and feel proud to post a picture of themselves in front of it and, you know, or showing off to their friends that they got to see this cool thing.
Yeah.
You know, that'd be a pretty great nod to our success.
Right, but in the context of overall.
Right.
The project
Right.
is fantastic, yeah.
Yeah, you know, I appreciate you putting up this image here, and I'll just point out really quickly what we are. So this is our site right here, this piece right here. And this is the Palo Alto Redwoods residential development. And then the guy who built all that had an architectural office that was in this building, and now it's just an office building for someone else. And I literally live on the street that's right here. But, you know, you can see it's the America's Value, the Palo Alto Inn, this, and then, you know, the Oak Motel. Dinah's, of course, is a pretty big place, and then I was also responsible for the Home and Suites. It's right there on El Camino.
Are any of the other hotels getting updated, do you guys know?
They will be. It's gonna, you know, I think over time, all of this stuff gentrifies. That, you know, I was a little flip about this $800 per night thing, but they are expensive during the week, and so, but the business is a Sunday through Thursday business, and then on the weekends, the rooms are like $165. Right, there's like no weekend business, and so we go from having literally about a 89 to 93% occupancy rate in these hotels during the week to 20 or 30% on the weekends. It's really tremendous, the volume of business traffic that's coming through. And so I do think that other people who have hotels are probably, you know, they're looking at this going, I should
Right,
update too.
can't just wait for Stanford graduation, right?
Right. So, you know, I mean, as an example, I think one of the clear examples of this is the Hotel Parmani.
Yeah.
It's next door to the fish market. Right, that's been there since the 20s. I was helping them with some of their entitlements early on, and I found a photograph of that building when it was like the roadside motel or something it was called. And there's literally an airplane parked next to it that had flown into a field, right, and parked on El Camino, and, you know, there's nothing else around it. Some of these places have been around forever, and the Parmani is about to take their building down entirely, build a big garage, and do 100 rooms there as well, so.
The land is just getting too expensive for it too,
And there's demand,
for them not to
right, there's
monetize
demand,
it
and,
at a higher rate, right?
what I'm most proud about
Yeah.
in terms of some of these hotels, in you know, a significant way, is that I look at vehicle miles traveled. Right, I look at how far people have to go as they come to the hotel and also as they come and go from the hotel. And the idea of being able to get to and from where we are going quickly is really a reflection of where the hotels are located. And so having hotels in a location like this, having more rooms in a location like this, will actually improve traffic over time. And so I'm hopeful that as we start to get the right uses in the right places, we'll improve some of the tough traffic issues that we're all having around here.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Exciting project, and looking
Thank you for
forward
your
to the end of it and see what you come up with. So it's
We'll
very
probably-
exciting.
We'll probably be back here.
Oh, yeah, we'll be back a few times, so we'll,
Gotta come back for final review,
Yeah,
so.
No, we'll look forward to that. Okay. and
Oh,
you'll-
maybe a little
so that-
in between this and final review? I mean, will there be dialogue?
So there, staff definitely works with the applicants. There is an optional opportunity, once you've done your artist selection, to come to the commission and sort of update them on the direction of the art and the artists that have been selected.
I can tell you now, we'd like to do that.
Okay, great.
We'd like to be
yeah, that'd be
collaborative
wonderful.
about this.
And we're really excited. about
Yeah.
this.
Good, thank you.
Looks like it's gonna be a great project.
So,
Hey, thank you. Have a good night.
Great, have a good evening.
Thank you.
Yeah, happy holidays, happy Halloween, or Halloween, Thanksgiving, excuse me, yeah, happy Thanksgiving.
This is a nice thing you guys are doing, actually. All right, take care.
Thank you, have a good night.
Any announcements? Hey, next scheduled meeting is December 20th, and that,
Wait, what are we doing oh, we are in November already.
yes. So they'll depend on if anything is on the agenda, and we may want to plan a little get-together if we don't have a meeting to, for the holidays. So kind of keep that in mind, and I guess we'll send out some dates or ask for some dates that would be good to meet for a cocktail and holiday spirit. Okay, well, thank you all, and meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.